It's good to be with you, and I'm looking forward to our time together. Looking forward to spending the beginning part of this week with you. You'll have to give me your name multiple times, but I think you understand that as I'll try to get it all, and I'll probably get it all down by Thursday, and we'll be set for that, and it'll be no problem at all. I'm going to do a series in these lessons. We're going to talk about hope because it just seems like in our world today and all that we've experienced, and especially over the past few years, and the difficulties that we face, the trials that we go through, that we could use some glimpses and reminders and pictures of hope. And so what I intend to do for the lessons that I'm going to give is spend some time taking some different areas of life, different hardships in life, and talk about how we can have hope in Jesus Christ through those difficulties. And I'll state before we get going that I'm not making any kind of statements about technology. I did bring PowerPoints, and the system here rejected it completely and said, I am not going to let you do that. So maybe later in the week we'll get the technology figured out. I use a Macintosh, and I saved it all into PowerPoint, but this thing did not like that. So we'll see about that in some later ones, but there's something nice and freeing about not having to deal with a clicker and all that stuff anyway. You have your Bibles. We'll be in Ecclesiastes for our first lesson in this hour. Ecclesiastes. And the lesson title is Hope When Empty. And I would imagine if you think about the book of Ecclesiastes, that might not be the first place you would run to for a picture of hope. When you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it can sometimes be a little bit discouraging, maybe a little bit demoralizing, probably some depressing when you read about all the things that the preacher says that he's experienced and gone through. And so what I'd like to do in this lesson is take some glimpses from the book of Ecclesiastes and talk about how God is trying to show us hope through what the preacher is teaching and experiencing. Notice the beginning of the book of Ecclesiastes in verse 1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Trying to get our understanding of the word vanity can be a little bit tough. This Hebrew word is a little bit complex because we don't really have a good English word to put on the idea. A lot of the translations use the word vanity. You might have a translation that reads futile or futility. Some translations go with pointless or meaningless, and they're all trying to get at this word. And the idea of the word is a word like vapor or breath. But when he talks about the things of the world being vanity, he doesn't simply mean that it's transitory or like a breath, like how James puts it, where, that life is just a vapor. And his big point throughout the book of Ecclesiastes is not just to say, well, everything's just a breath, it's all just a vapor, it's all transitory, though that is certainly true. But I want you to think about when he talks about vanity of vanities or futility or pointlessness, is that he's trying to communicate that there is a lack of substance to it, if you will. And that idea of vapor, like if you tried to put your hand on vapor, that's not going to work out very well because it lacks a tangible substance for you to ultimately grab. And one of the things that he's trying to communicate as he goes through the book is that the ways of life and all of its challenges and experiences and all that you go through lack this satisfying substance to it. It's elusive. It just kind of gets out of your hands. In fact, I like how one author tried to describe this idea of vanity. He described it as cotton candy. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to put it. You all tried cotton candy in your younger years, right? Cotton candy might be the strangest substance you've ever consumed, right? Okay, it's there, it's tangible, it's pretty looking. You take a bite of it, and for about a millisecond, there's flavor, and then it just dissolves, right? And there's absolutely nothing left over. It doesn't make you full. No one ate a thing of cotton candy and said, I'm full for the day now. I've had my meal. It lacks substance. It's transitory and gone. You have it for a moment, and it disappears. This is kind of the idea that the writer is trying to get at when he talks about life. And he's trying to say to us, it lacks the satisfying umph to it. You get yourself involved in it, and it just kind of floats away. And I want you to notice that's how he talks here. Continuing in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, notice in verse 4, a generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and quickly runs to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south, and it goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing in which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of the former, nor will there be any remembrance of the later, yet to be among those who come after. It's an amazing image that he uses where he kind of just looks at life, he looks at the world, and he just says, have you noticed that nothing ever seems to be satisfied? And he uses all these images like rivers flowing into the sea. Does the sea ever go, okay, that's all. I'm topped out, can't take any more. I'm satisfied, that's all the water I need. He goes, that doesn't ever happen. The rivers keep flowing and flowing and flowing. He even then moves that to the picture of ourselves in verse 8. The eye is not satisfied in seeing, and the ear is not filled with hearing. And so he's trying to give us a picture about how unsatisfying life ultimately is when you're pursuing it and trying to achieve it and trying to enjoy it. This imagery that he uses here in verses 5 and 6 with the wind blows south and the wind blows north and then it blows all around, and then he uses in verse 5 about sun goes up, sun goes down. We understand that that's the way life is like. This is how we often describe it. You get to Monday and it's like, oh, it's Monday. I got a long week of work ahead. And all that we do is we look forward to the weekend, because on the weekend we are going to be able to get some rest and we're going to be able to get some stuff done. And so then we work and we toil and we get to the weekend and we're looking forward to the rest and we're looking forward to getting things done. And the weekend comes by and we're back to Monday and we go, where was the rest? And it still didn't get done. I still have more things to do. So, okay, well, next weekend I'm going to be able to rest. And next weekend everything's going to get done. And so we work and get to the weekend and we still don't rest. And we still don't get it all done. And we think, well, now it's going to be next. Well, this is what he's trying to do. Is he's saying, have you noticed that life is like this? We have a term that we use in our society and I like to use. We call it the rat race. I term it as being on the hamster wheel, is that it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, and you watch the hamster go, and you're kind of surprised that they keep doing it. They're not going anywhere. The wheel keeps turning. They keep running. They act like they're getting somewhere, but they're not getting anywhere. And he's describing life like that we spend our life thinking that it's actually going to move somewhere, when at the end of the day, you're going to come back around to Monday, and then you think you're going to live for the weekend, which the weekend doesn't pay off like you thought it was going to pay off, only to move back to Monday again. That's what this first chapter's doing. It's saying, you know what? That's like the waters in the sea. And that's like the sun going back around and around and around. And what's really amazing about these pictures is he's trying to show a futility and trying to show an emptiness to life. Now, here I set all that up, and you might be going, okay, you just completely depressed me and demoralized me. I thought we were talking about a week about hope, and you just told me I'm wasting my time, right? It was just, you've just observed all the futility in my life. We're all going home with our heads down, and we're completely depressed. Here's where this moves, is that what God is trying to show us is, I made life that way. Notice it in the text. Jump down to verse 13. Verse 13, it says, I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. Here's the line I want you to underline. It's an unhappy business that God has given the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, it is vanity, it is striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. I think this is an important picture to zero in on. Now, when you read that, it can maybe make us a little bit uneasy that God has given us this business that seems to be completely unsatisfying. That kind of just seems a little bit jarring to us. God has given us this miserable task of going around and around and around and around on the earth. And I want you to notice that he even really drives at that in verse 14 when he says, not only is it vanity, not satisfying, lacking substance, not giving you the payoff that you think it is, but notice the rest of it when he says it's like pursuing the wind. Have you ever noticed that about life? It's exhausting. As you try to pursue after the things of this world, the things that the world says that's going to make you happy, that's going to give you joy, that's going to give you satisfaction, you pursue and you pursue and you pursue. And he says, you know what that's like? It's like chasing wind. It's fun to tell your kids to try to do that. Hey kids, go out there and try to catch the wind. Good luck with that. It's an empty pursuit. There's no substance. You can't do it. And he's stating that God made it this way. In fact, notice in verse 15 how he words that. Notice he doesn't say that what's straight can't be made crooked. He says it was made crooked. And what is crooked can't be made straight. You know, so much of life is trying to make straight what's crooked. We're trying to make value and substance and meaning out of things that weren't intended to do that. You know, our world is full of that right now. Our world is trying so hard to make lasting meaning out of things that lack substance and are transitory. I don't typically watch much TV or the news. My wife likes to turn on the news in the morning, and I don't think they're doing it anymore. But for a while on Sunday mornings, one of the news programs had this thing that was called A Life Well Lived. And it was like every Sunday morning they would pick some person and they would talk about their life. And it was really fascinating to listen to how they tried to put meaning into this person's life. Like one of the times this was a person who played basketball for this particular team during this particular scenario, and they scored an awful lot of points. And their jersey was hung up in the rafters of the building, and then they retired to the Florida Keys where they sit on the beach and they pick up seashells the rest of their days. Life well lived. Really? Is that the best we've got? Is you played some basketball and now you're collecting shells? That's life well lived? That's the substance? That's what it's all about? No, this is what the writer is trying to say is, do you see that everything that we try to make valuable, satisfying, is like pursuing the wind? It's just this emptiness that you grab it and you kind of go, oh, that's nice, but it's cotton candy. You taste it a second, you go, oh, this is it, this is really great. And then it's not so great anymore. I suppose we could all sign on the dotted line or raise our hands about all the things that we thought that we had or purchased that was going to be the thing that we needed, that was going to give us the long-lasting happiness and satisfaction, and it turned out not to be the case. One of my favorites is when you buy a brand new car, if you're like me, what do you do with your brand new car? You got to go to the store. All right, well, I'm parking it out, kind of out in the distance. I'm not parking it in there real tight. If that parking spot looks real, I'm trying to keep it nice. Every week I'm washing the car, trying to make it look good, keep it new. Don't put your muddy feet in here. Nobody's eating in this vehicle. I'm going to keep it nice. Well, John just asked me the other day, how old's your car? It's now 11 years old. Do you think I treat it like that now? No, if there's 2 jalopies there over the line, I'm sliding it right in there. I don't care. I'm not washing it every week anymore. Yeah. Why? Because what pretended to be of value and lasting satisfaction can't. It can't. And the writer of Ecclesiastes is telling you there in verse 13, God made it that way. Which leads to this big question, why did God make it this way? Why is everything that you pursue in life under the sun a pursuing of wind? Why does it end up to not be the substance that it claims to be? Why does it end up being unsatisfying? Why does it end up being empty? Well, I think there's a number of answers that God gives us in this picture. But let's start with the first picture. Go over to Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and look at verse 6. And as you're turning there, what's interesting about the emptiness is how many times does that cause people to be demoralized and depressed? And this is kind of the problem, is they spend so much of their life thinking that they're going to put their hands on something that's going to be this great value, and it's not. Here they are, and well, if I just had more money, then I'd be happy. If I just had the promotion, then I'd be happy. If I just had a better career, then I'd be happy. If I just lived in a different location, then I'd be happy. Then if I just had a better house or a bigger house or a nicer car, if I was only married, if I was only divorced, if I only had picked a different spouse, if I didn't have kids, if I had kids. I mean, we go through all of the rigmarole of all of these things. That's going to satisfy. And it's emptiness. It's not. So what's God doing? Well, look at Ecclesiastes 4 and verse 6. And notice the first point he makes, he says, better to have a handful of quietness than 2 handfuls of toil and striving after the wind. That's one for the refrigerator. We live in a world that says life is better when you have 2 handfuls laboring, striving, and chasing wind. Go for life with all that you have. Go for it hard. Go for it with both hands. Make sure you get everything there is out there. And notice the writer is saying, you know what's actually better than that? 1 handful and some rest. 1 handful and a little bit of quietness. What's God trying to say? Number 1, if there was a screen. God's trying to teach us contentment. In all of the emptiness, God is trying to teach us contentment. He's trying to show us something as you keep going for more and more things, and it doesn't satisfy. The new job didn't satisfy. It's got more problems. The new toys, that didn't satisfy. They just start breaking. They just start wearing out. Somebody slams the side of the car, and now your brand new car isn't so brand new. And I was so disappointed when that happened to my car. I left it in the parking lot, and I was like on the top deck of a parking garage, and I thought, I'm surely safe. Went on a trip, came back, scratched right down this, a huge gash right down the side of the car. What's God saying? Stop putting your hope in stuff. And be content with what you have. We make a huge mistake of thinking that joy and satisfaction is out there somewhere, and we don't see that it's right here in our hand that we already have. Better 1 handful with quiet than ignoring the handful and running for more and more and more. God's trying to teach us a picture of contentment. Friends, more is not going to make life better. More is not going to make us happier. More is not going to give us the satisfaction that we need. But I hope that we will realize, do you know that's Satan's temptation? That's Satan's lie to us, right? Satan's lie to us is, if you had this particular thing, then you would be satisfied and happy. So we go for it. And then you know what Satan says after you've obtained it? Well, that wasn't it. You should go for that instead. This is really what he does with sin. With sin, he says, that's going to make you satisfied and happy. And then it doesn't. It just leaves you with guilt and shame. And what Satan then turns around and says is, well, you didn't do it right. You need to go bigger, right? And he does that with our stuff. Okay, yes, you've got this nice place, but you'd be happier if you had twice the square footage. You know, if you, then you'd be happier. Or, the car that you have, that's not going to make you happy. You need a new car. One of my favorites is the phones these days, right? You know, you get the new phone, this is great, this is it. And then after a few months, the 14 wasn't the one. You needed the Ultra Plus Max. That would have made you happy if you just plugged down for the Ultra Max Plus. Then you would have been satisfied with your phone, but silly you cut a corner there, you spent a few less dollars, and now you're just stuck with a 14, and that's why you're unhappy. So next time, get the Plus, and then you do, and then guess what? The 16 comes out, and you're like, oh. This is what Satan does. And what's God trying to say is learn contentment. Be happy with what you have, because getting more isn't going to make you happy, and we can all look at our lives and prove it. We can all look at all the things that we've tried to do or tried to accumulate or tried to have and tried to find satisfaction in, and it didn't do it. It left you empty after a while. Now, in the beginning, we'll all admit, in the beginning it's cotton candy, right? It was good for a moment. It had that initial hit. Yep, I tasted it for a second, and then it disappears. And so he's trying to show us the need for contentment. I want you to see one other thing that he's trying to show us in this. It's there in chapter 4 as well. If you look at verse 9. In verse 9 of Ecclesiastes 4, he says, 2 are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. And if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. And he's going to go through here and talk about the importance of relationships. 2 is better than 1, and he gets to like verse 12 and talks about a cord of 3 can't be broken. The need to value people and the need to value relationships. You want to know one of the more terrible things that happens in our pursuit of chasing the wind and trying to find satisfaction out there is we destroy relationships in the process. I can't tell you how many times I have seen people destroy families and friendships and relationships, things that have some meaning and some value, because they're pursuing for more. And there's always the belief that you can put the relationship on pause, pursue more, and they'll still be there after you're done chasing the wind. And I'm going to tell you something right now. They won't be. I cannot tell you how many times I have encountered Christians or even been a part of a funeral. Just a few years ago, I did a funeral for a person who went to our church and had this big funeral room, probably about the size of this auditorium. 4 people came. And I didn't feel bad for the one who had passed away, but just reflected on, what did you do in your life to burn so many bridges that no one cared that you died? What were you pursuing that you thought was so important that you sacrificed everybody else, and now what do you have to show for it? Here you are. You're gone. And 4 people came. I could tell you other stories of that. I have an older lady who had that happen. She didn't even bother with a funeral service because she knew none of her kids would come. She had family alive. And she knew they weren't going to care. This is what Ecclesiastes is talking about, is the pursuing of wind destroys us and it destroys relationships. Have contentment. Enjoy what God has given to you. Appreciate the people in your life. Be happy with what you have. This is one of the big pictures that God is trying to communicate to us. In fact, go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I'm going to talk about 3 applications here now of this idea of what he's trying to teach us. What are the conclusions that God wants us to draw if life is meant to not be satisfying but is a pursuing of the wind? I want you to notice what he says in chapter 2 and verse 24. Chapter 2, verse 24. There is nothing better for a person than he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in all his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given him wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give it to the one who pleases God. This is also a vanity and a striving after the wind. I want you to see that he says, and you see it repeatedly said by this author, God has given us this time to enjoy life. Do you see that in verse 24? Nothing better for a person to do than to enjoy life. But notice how he qualifies that in verse 24 and in verse 25. Enjoy life with God. Enjoy the life that God has given you. See, the problem is we ignore God, we ignore his instructions, and we think satisfaction's out there. And God is saying, you're not going to be more satisfied out there. Be content with what you have. Enjoy the life that you have that God himself has given to you. Enjoy the blessings he's given to you. Enjoy the relationships that he's given to you. You are meant to enjoy life, but put it under the wrap of with God. With God by your side, with recognition that God has given you this life, and God has given you what you have, and God has given you these blessings. So much of our difficulty about life is we're trying to say that it's out there somewhere that we'll be happy. And God is saying, you could be happy right now if you would just put me in your life and see what I've given you right here. So much of our trouble is we just don't appreciate what we have in our hand right now. You know, we have a song, like, count your many blessings, name them one by one. We want to count all the blessings that we don't have in our hand. They're all out there somewhere. One of these days I'm going to get it. One of these days I'm going to have it. And God's saying, but you're not looking at what you already have right now. You're not seeing what God has already placed in your hands. When we stop and do that, there is so much to look at that God has given us. Each one of us right now has clothing. We all have a place to live. We all have a means to get around. We all have some kind of income coming in. Here is God taking care of us. And God is showing us this. Now, I'll put a pin on this so I don't steal a future sermon that I think I'm doing Wednesday night. But keep this idea in mind about how God is trying to show us, I'll care for you in the moment right now. I've given you what you have. So much of the frustration is that we're trying to find it out there. In fact, notice it in chapter 9. Go to Ecclesiastes 9. I love how the writer of Ecclesiastes puts this. We'll all appreciate this one. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 11. Chapter 9, verse 11. Again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not to the swift, the battle not to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to all, for man does not know his time. Like fish that are taken in an evil net, like birds that are caught in a snare, so the children of man are snared at an evil time, and when it suddenly falls upon them. And I've seen that this is an example of wisdom under the sun, and it seemed great to me. This is an amazing picture. We all can relate to this. He says that the race is not given to the swift. How many times has the promotion been given to somebody who doesn't deserve it? How many times does somebody who shouldn't get something because they aren't working hard actually get it? Here is a picture that he's saying, here's the way life is. We like to think that the one who is the strongest always wins. But we all know that's not the case. That doesn't happen in life. One of my favorite examples of this present day is when Russia invaded Ukraine. Do you remember how fast they thought Ukraine was going to fall because Ukraine's so little, they don't have anything? You know, they were going to last a couple of days, right? I think we're like rolling on to year 3 now at this point. And by all metrics, all the commanders look at it and go, okay, they're bigger and they're stronger and they've got more people. It doesn't always work that way in life. The race is not always to the swift. We even have a story about that, about how the tortoise beat the hare. We know this. Yet we think if I work hard enough, I have to have this particular outcome. No, you don't. No, you don't. It proves elusive. It always proves elusive. Are you like me, where just when you start to get ahead financially, something breaks big, right? Just when you think, oh, I got that raise I finally needed. Okay, we're gonna make it. And then I tell you, last fall, my van air conditioning decided to be $6,000 worth of problems. Well, there goes all that. Because the race isn't to the swift. And the battle isn't always to the strong. And here's God saying, I made it that way. I made the world crooked and it can't be straightened. You're not going to fix this. It's always this way. So enjoy the life that God has given you. Not the life that you think is out there, but the life that God has given you right now. Appreciate it, take rest in it, enjoy it. That's number 1. Number 2, say still, how can I be hopeful in all of this? Chapter 8, verse 7. Chapter 8, verse 7. Since no one knows the future, who can tell someone what is to come? And no one has the power over the wind to contain it, so no one has the power over the time of their death. We'd all like to pretend that we're in charge of when we're going to go, right? I'm going to live to be 90 years old. I'm going to preach my last sermon and then just close the casket on myself, and just go out the way I want to go out. We all have a vision of how we're going to go, right? We're going to go out on our terms, on our time, right? We forget that we don't have any power over that. One of my favorite examples of that. What power did you use last night to make sure that you woke up this morning? Isn't sleep a strange thing? You think about, you don't tell yourself to wake up like you have power over it. It just happens. But we act like we're in so much control, we have so much power, right? Yet as soon as you close your eyes, that's not on you if you get up. You know, you didn't have to like sit there and go, okay, brain, please make sure to breathe while I'm unconscious. please make sure to keep everything going. You're not doing that. It is or it isn't. We don't have the control. Did not 2020 teach us we don't have the control? All of our plans, all of my vacation plans, all of the plans of everything we were going to do. We have so much control, so much power. 2020 comes, right? How did all that power work? How did all that wealth work? How did all that strength work? We couldn't even get toilet paper. And here we are. We're so powerful, we can't even get toilet paper. We're wrestling over toilet paper. We forget that we don't know when we're going to go. We don't have control over this life, so you better enjoy life as it's given to you right now, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. And since tomorrow's not guaranteed, notice where he's going to go. Final, chapter 12. But not where you think I'm going to go in chapter 12. Not yet, not yet. Beginning of chapter 12. Beginning of chapter 12 is really important. Don't skip to the end. We want to just go, first part is all, so fear God. Hold on. Beginning of chapter 12. Remember the Creator in the days of your youth. Chapter 12, verse 1. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Why? Why is it so? We usually put a period right there, don't we? We tell all of our kids, you need to remember your Creator in the days of your youth. And we period. There's not a period. He's got a big, long explanation of why. To remember your Creator when you're young. Keep going. Before the evil days come. When the years draw near in which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men are bent and the grinders cease because they are few and those who look through the window are dim. Hold on a minute. You know what he's describing here, right? These are like really nice ways to describe the failing of the body, right? The grinders are few. And the windows are dim. You notice before I started, I made sure this light was on for me. As time goes on, these things start breaking down. Verse 4, that the doors on the street are shut when the sound of the grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of the bird. I asked John, what time do you get up? I think you said something like 3 something in the morning. I said, why in the world do you get up at 3:45 in the morning? He said, it's not a choice. It's not a choice. I said, I'm beginning to understand that. When I was in college, I could sleep in until 2 p.m., stayed up till 5 in the morning, and then slept till 2, 3 in the afternoon, right? No problem. Now sleeping in is 8. I'm getting there. I'm on my way. It's moving that way. Here he's just describing the nature of life, and he's saying, you want to know why you need to remember the days of your youth, remember the Creator in the days of your youth, why that's so important? Because life's going to get hard. And life has the tendency to sour you and make things miserable and make things difficult and kind of make us cranky because things hurt. I'm getting to the point now where waking up out of bed, sleeping hurts something. This makes no sense to me, Age is happening where I didn't even do anything and now I'm hurting. I don't even understand why. How did sleeping hurt me? But it happened. And it's going to torment you, so you need to push into God while you can, because life isn't going to be easy but painful and hard. Which then gets us to our point. The very end of chapter 12. Verse 13. So this is the end of the matter, for all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole of man. This is why we exist. And here's our big picture for hope when empty. When you pursue the things of the wind and you thought the family or the children or the spouse or the car or the grandkids or the job or the promotion or the house or the change of location or retirement or whatever it is, you thought it was going to be satisfying and it wasn't, here's hope. You didn't do anything wrong. God made it that way. It's empty because that's the way God made life, so that we would be content with what we have and turn our eyes upward. Every time something's empty, tell yourself, I didn't pursue something wrong. I don't need to try harder and faster. No. It's empty because God made it empty, so that you would enjoy what you have in your hand that's been given to you by God, and so that you would turn your eyes upward and see that God made us to seek him and not the things of this earth. Let's go to God in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for teaching us the need to seek you with all of our heart. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to be wise in our pursuits and help us to see the emptiness of the things of this world, that none of the things here can truly satisfy. And Lord, forgive us for as often as we have tried to make value and lasting satisfaction out of things that you have decreed would never do it. And Lord, we heard from your Son who told that Samaritan woman that if we would come to your Son and drink the waters that he offers, that we would never be thirsty again. Help us to listen to that invitation. And help us to seek the waters that only you can give, that truly satisfy, and not the false waters that the world gives to us. Lord, I pray that you would help us to use our lives in a way that show us our contentment and thanksgiving to you. Lord, I pray that we would live our lives in such a way that we would always be content and satisfied with all that you've done for us, knowing that we look forward to our ultimate satisfaction and ultimate joy in eternity with you. Lord, we thank you for these promises. In Jesus' name, amen.